What is up, guys? Stark here. I am back for day 11 of the 25 Days of Fate, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the 3-star and below servants, and more specifically the ones that are actually going to be really good. So as I go through this video, a lot of these characters might seem very obvious to you, and if they are obvious to you, then this video is not exactly meant for you. I'm mainly doing this for newer players who don't know which characters are good and which characters are bad, and this is kind of going to be a little bit of a video to help them decide which characters to level up early on in the game and as they progress. So I'm going to pick at least one servant from every class. Some of them will have multiple servants, and I'm just going to go ahead and talk about them a little bit and tell you why I think they're good characters to have. These are exclusive to non-gacha characters, so these are characters you can get in the friend point summon, and you don't have to spend any money. So they're free-to-play characters. Some of the 3-star characters that I did want to include, like say Jaguar Warrior, they're not on this list because they are an unlockable servant. So you have to clear Babylonia to get that servant, and at that point you're going to be familiar enough with the game to know which characters are good and which characters aren't. So I left them off the list just because I don't think that character really fits into the video I'm trying to make here. So we'll start off with Sabers as always, and this was both a very difficult decision and a very easy decision at the same time. It was difficult in the sense that none of these Sabers really stood out to me as super amazing that I really wanted to talk about, but at the same time, one of them is god-awful, one of them is locked to the story, so that left me two choices, and you know, at that point it was a pretty easy pick as to who I was going to go with, and that is going to be Julius Caesar. So Caesar is a pretty good servant despite what I just said, and he does function primarily as a support servant who does do some pretty good damage overall. He has a whole bunch of skills that can increase your entire party's stats. So he has the Noble Phantasm increase, he has the party attack increase, and he will also be able to increase the allies' critical damage. And once you get the rank up quest, you will also be able to increase their star generation for 3 turns. So this is going to be really nice. Early game, you want as many party buffs as possible because you're going to have low level characters, low stats, and a lot of characters are going to be squishy at that point. So he can help, you know, get your attack bonuses up and do a little bit more damage. And he also does have a very strong Noble Phantasm as well. That's going to be a single target, which will give you critical stars, and you can just use those to combo off on chains for crits. And overall, he's definitely not a servant I would go out of my way for, but you know, if you are struggling at the Saber class, he is a pretty solid option, you know, at the beginning of the game anyway. And he does have a few spots later on in the game in certain teams, but overall he's just kind of lower on the list for servants I really would have liked to have talked about in this video. So now moving on to the archers, and this one is going to have the bulk of the characters, and pretty much every single 3-star and below archer is usable and very good in their own right, in their own way. But I'm not going to talk about them all. I'm only going to pick a couple of them and talk about them. First up being Robin Hood. So Robin Hood mainly makes this list for his incredible Noble Phantasm, and there's not much else to say really. It can do a ton of damage. Granted, you know, that enemy needs to be poisoned, but his first skill will be able to supply that. And early on in the game, you're not going to have characters to max ascension and things like that. So being able to use his first skill to get the poison, even like without having to ascend or unlock any of his other skills, is really nice. You're going to be able to use him straight away, use his first skill, use his Noble Phantasm. Obviously, it won't do as much damage, but it does a ton of damage to begin with as long as that enemy is poisoned, and he's just a really good option to throw in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out real fast to show a clip of Robin Hood's Noble Phantasm to kind of give you guys a little bit of an example of what kind of damage we're talking about here, especially if you're going against Sabers. Alright, so we're back, and you guys can see he can do a ton of damage, and yeah, I know mine's almost near maxed out, but even if you don't, he's still going to do a lot of damage. He has one of the stronger Noble Phantasms in the game, especially against Sabers. Next up for the archers, we have David. He's going to be a 3-star servant who is going to be more of a support servant. He has a ton of supportive skills on his kit, being able to grant the entire team an evasion. Now, it's just for one attack, but still, you know, sometimes, especially early on in the game, that's going to be very helpful. You're also going to be able to heal and increase the party's attack. So David, if you get him early on, he's going to be a very, very good ally to have on your team. He does have a decently powerful Noble Phantasm as well, so you do have that in your back pocket if you need it. But overall, you're going to be using David for support, and he is a very, very good support character to have. And last but not least, for the archers, we have a Rash. So he's going to be a 1-star servant, and this is the thing that I really like about Fate. So in most other games, the 1-star and the 2-star servants especially, most people don't even look at them. They just throw them away or sell them, and that's not true in Fate. In Fate, almost every character has their own role, their own part to play in some sort of team, in some situation, and a Rash is no exception. As a 1-star servant, this guy can dish out a ton of damage. His Noble Phantasm especially can just wipe out waves, and you don't really have to try that much. You know, he does have a rank up quest that will help charge his own Noble Phantasm gauge, and you can upgrade his Noble Phantasm to do more damage. Even without any of that, you're still going to be doing a lot of damage, especially early on when the waves of enemies are a lot easier and have less HP. He's going to just steamroll all over this. Now, I know he does die at the end of his Noble Phantasm, but that's okay. You know, you're just going to go in and you're going to use him to clear a wave. Potentially that could be the boss wave. It could even be the first wave, and that'll just give you less time that you're going to be taking attacks in. Like if you're going into a fight with a little bit of a lower level team and you only have to clear 2 waves instead of 3, that's going to give you a much better chance of succeeding than you would if you had 3 waves to do. And especially because he can clear out some of the final boss waves with his Noble Phantasm, especially if you have him leveled up. He's just going to be a very good character overall. He's also really good for farming. His Noble Phantasm is especially fast, so you do lose a lot of time on that, which is really good. You want it to be as fast as possible. And he can still clear high level waves of like farming dungeons and events and things like that with his Noble Phantasm. So this is definitely going to be one character you want to max out. So I'm just going to do a quick little cut here to a Rash's Noble Phantasm, and I'll see you guys in a couple seconds when it's done. So there you go, guys. That is a Rash's Noble Phantasm. It does a ton of damage, and I wasn't even going against sabers in that video, and it still did that much damage. It cleared out the entire wave. That just shows you guys how strong his Noble Phantasm is, and it's definitely something you guys should be focused on getting. Moving on to the Lancer class, this is going to be probably the most obvious option or character out there, and that's going to be Cuchulainn. So he's a 3-star Lancer, and this guy is just an absolute monster. He is probably one of the hardest characters to kill. He is usable even for high level players, and he's got a low cost. He's got, like I said, he's got so much survivability. All of his skills help him keep him alive. He has guts, he has evasion, he has a defense increase, he has a heal, he can remove debuffs. This guy has so much defensive capabilities. He's going to be a fantastic option to play on your team strictly because of that. Like, he's going to be so hard to kill. It's going to give you a lot of turns, a lot of options, and a lot of time in order to take down whatever quest you're going up against. And this guy's pretty strong in his own right too. He's not just a pushover. He's got a very powerful Noble Phantasm that has a chance to inflict death on the enemy. He's got decent star generation, decent star absorption, decent Noble Phantasm generation. So overall, this guy is amazing. He can potentially solo some of the earlier fights at earlier levels. So now moving on to the Riders, and the Rider class is, as I've always stated, in my opinion, one of the weaker and thinnest classes in the game. But there still are a few good servants you could pull out from the friend point pool in order to help you along the way, and the first one is going to be Ushiwaka. So Ushiwaka has a couple of team buffs, which again is going to be very helpful as you progress, and that'll help you increase your Noble Phantasm generation and increase your party's attack. So pretty much characters with charisma are going to be your best friend, and Ushiwaka does have that. She also does have a self-evasion, which is going to be really nice to keep her alive, and she has a very strong Noble Phantasm as well, so you're going to be able to take out a lot of bosses in the earlier story with her. Next up, we're going to have Medusa. Now, Medusa's not going to be as powerful as Ushiwaka, but she does have the ability to stun enemies, and she does have really strong attack with her second skill, and she has the ability to charge her own Noble Phantasm. So you're going to be able to get a lot out of her, and if you don't decide to use Ushiwaka Maru, then Medusa is definitely a really good option. Moving on to the casters, and the caster class is primarily your support class, and you can pretty much use any caster you want. They all are primarily support casters. There are a few exceptions, but if we're talking about the 1 and 2 stars and 3 stars, then the ones that I want to pick out here are going to be William Shakespeare first. So William Shakespeare is a 2-star servant, but he does have a pretty helpful kit of skills, especially with his first skill being able to increase your party's buster performance for 1 turn. So if you have any type of buster team, he becomes somewhat of an option to play. And at this point in the game, you guys probably aren't going to have too many servants or too many characters that can help you increase your buster card effectiveness. So throwing William Shakespeare on is going to be very helpful. Again, as I said previously, it's his first skill, so you don't have to evolve him or ascend him. So you could just throw him on your team and use his skill. Obviously, if it's level 1, it's not going to do as much as level 10. But not having to ascend characters and just throw them on your team isn't like the best strategy in the world. But sometimes you can't ascend the character, you can't max them out right away, and sometimes you just want to throw him on your team and get a little bit of an extra push, and his first skill could definitely help you do that. Next up for the caster class, we have Hans. Hans is one of the better support characters in the game in general, not just talking about 3-star or below servants. He can hang with the 5 stars as well, and this guy's got a lot. He can increase your party's critical damage, he can heal, he can increase defense, he can increase attack. Now this is pretty much tied to his Noble Phantasm, but he does have a skill that will increase his own gauge. He has, arts card deck, so you're going to be able to get his Noble Phantasm off pretty easily, and then you can get those buffs off with your Noble Phantasm, which will definitely help keep your team alive and buff them up, and you're just going to get a lot out of Hans. He's definitely one of the characters I would recommend leveling up as quickly as possible, right up there with Ku. So now we're going to move on to assassins, and the first one is going to be the regent himself, Sasaki Kojiro. So Sasaki finds a lot of his play early on in the story, and primarily in Orleans, because a lot of the enemies are riders, and him being an assassin, he will trash riders. He does fall off a bit after you beat Orleans, but starting out early on in the game, you're not going to have a lot of servants, you're not going to have a lot of max level ascended servants, so being able to throw on a really good assassin that can help you take down all those rider enemies in Orleans is going to be very helpful, and you should definitely focus on leveling him up at least until you clear Orleans. Another good option is going to be Fuma Kotaro. Now he's going to be a 3-star assassin, and this guy is he's pretty much a debuffer. He has a lot of skills that can debuff the enemies, being able to reduce their attack, their critical chance, and their debuff resistance. So this is really nice. As I've said probably 100 times already, you're not going to have a fully leveled team, you're not going to have a lot of characters, and because of that, your characters are going to die faster. So being able to reduce the enemy's attack and their ability to crit is going to be extremely helpful as you progress through the story and level up your characters to where they need to be. In addition to that though, this guy will generate a ton of stars. He's right up there with Jack as one of the better star generators in the game, and being able to get him as a 3-star servant for free is going to be very helpful for you. Moving on to Berserkers, I have Lulu as my selected character, but really, Berserkers are your damage dealers. They're going to be effective against pretty much every class, so it really doesn't matter which Berserker you get. If I had to say, just pick one and just focus on leveling up that Berserker. They're going to do a ton of damage. They're probably going to be your best damage dealer. So level them up and pick other characters to support them to help keep them alive, because they will die really fast. But anyway, I picked Lulu because he has one of the strongest Noble Phantasms that you can use for 3 stars and below, and he's got a very good kit of skills to help supplement that. I do have a clip showing his Noble Phantasm. My character is level 28. It's not max ascended. I have none of his skills leveled up at all. He is Noble Phantasm level 5, which shouldn't be hard to get because you get all these characters in friend point summons, and you get 1 friend point summon for free every single day, or 1 multi-pull for the friend point summon every single day you get for free. So just keep doing that every single day. Eventually you'll get all your 3-star characters and below max Noble Phantasm without even trying. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and cut over to this clip and show you guys what he can do, and then we'll come right back. So there you go, guys. That was a not maxed out, not fully ascended Lulu doing a ridiculous amount of damage. So just imagine if you had him maxed out completely. Now I know I have a whole bunch of buffs on him, and I did in the previous videos as well, but that's the glory of Fate. You could just take a support Waver or a support Merlin and just buff up your team and get all those attack buffs. So it's not really something that you need to supply yourself. You could just pick a friend with a really good support character for you, and sometimes that's enough to just carry you right on through that mission. And then finally we have the starter character for Fate, and that is going to be Mash. So in a lot of gacha games, and pretty much every other gacha game that I've ever played personally, I don't know how true this is for other games, but in all the ones I've played, the starting character is absolute trash. You'll never play them after a certain point in the game, and really you just forget about them. Sometimes you don't even use that character because they're just so bad, and there's really nothing you can do to change that. Mash is different though, and I know she technically can become a 4-star through story progression, but technically all these characters can become 4 or 5 stars if you grail them. So I'm not really counting that. She starts as a 3-star, so she counts for me. As I just said, she does progress in the story. So as you progress through the story mode, Mash is going to get stronger and stronger, and eventually she will ascend to a 4-star. And that's really cool. She's a starter character that has some sort of youth, and she will grow as you progress through the story. And not only does she have some sort of use, she's absolutely amazing. She is one of the best support characters in the game. She has a fantastic defensive kit of skills, being able to increase your defense. She can eventually increase the attack as well. She can apply invincibility as well as charge the normal Phantasm gauge, and she has a built-in taunt, so you can take the fire off your allies onto herself. So she's an absolutely fantastic servant, and she also has 0 cost. And this is going to be a huge thing early on in the game. You're not going to have a lot of cost. And this is another thing that Fate does differently from a lot of other gacha games. Most other gacha games just give you tons of cost, so you could just throw on the best characters, make a team full of legendary characters, 5, 6 stars, whatever the highest rarity is in that game, and you're good. Fate doesn't do that. You have to plan strategic. You really can't make a team with full 5 stars and 5-star craft essences, so you have to plan around that. And Mash having a 0 cost is going to be amazing. You can just throw her on your team and it does nothing for your cost. You can throw on other characters. It gives you a little bit more leeway to bring stronger characters into the fight. So she should definitely be someone you're always going to be using, at least early on in the game, until you get enough cost to be able to get in a couple 5 stars onto your team. So that's it, guys. I know I've probably missed a few characters, so you can let me know in the comments below which characters I missed that you guys think deserve to be in this video. But I only wanted to pick a couple characters from each class, otherwise this video would be like an hour long, and I just don't have the time for that. But I hope you guys did enjoy it. I hope it helped the newer players out in order to see which characters they should worry about focusing on leveling. And again, you can pick whatever characters you want. Most of the characters in the game are very good and are usable. So if you do like one character over something that I suggested, then by all means go ahead and use that character. These are just a few suggestions that I have seen over the course of my playing that are very good and very helpful, and sometimes can even help you later on as you progress towards higher levels and higher event difficulties. So if you did like this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, don't forget to check the links below to my Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and Discord. And I will have the link in the description below for the giveaway. Throughout the entire month of December, I am doing a Fate Grand Order giveaway where you have a chance to win some Saint Quartz. So feel free to enter that if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow.